Hi, team. Welcome to 10 Talks, another conversation all about transitioning to next. Whatever next is, we don't know. We're curious. We're exploring. We've got two fabulous coaches that are really sharing with us their journey on how they have gone from transition to next. We're in the middle of it. We've got lots of next happening. And today's conversation is all about having the courage to really go for what matters to you. What's a 10 for you personally, professionally, philanthropically? How do we align it? And the first thing to do is start to think about being the solution. What is it that's in your life, in the world, that matters to you in a way that you're willing to really invest and be the solution to it? So it's a good question to ask yourself when you're curious about next is, what really is a solution that I want to be? And so, Lynn and Julie, thank you for joining us as we talk about transition to next. So, Julie, just catch us up a bit on where you are. We know you've transitioned from sport coach to sport executive to next. So, just tell us where you are right now.
Yeah, so I'm in a transitional time, very transitional, both in a personal and professional sense. So we just moved this past week to a new home that we've been kind of prepping for literally 3 years since 2019. And the timing of it was interesting and great all at the same time because I finished up my previous role in my previous job the Friday before we moved. So I'm in definitely a season of my life that's like getting my family settled, getting settled in our new home and kind of deciding what's next. So I'm really excited about that. But as you were asking that question, I thought to myself, I think the challenge of this moment for me from a career perspective is making a decision about what's next and kind of exploring that. And I think the pressure that I put on myself to like have this path and this design of what I want it to look like. And as you were talking, I thought, this is another season of my life and it is a transitional season, but I don't need to make a decision about the next chapter and the next season being this like massive decision in my life, right? Like we have to bring it back to like what makes sense in the season and where my priorities are at this point in my life. And that doesn't need to be the same as my priorities 2 years from now or 5 years from now. The decisions that I've made about my career have frankly been in like a 4-year period or a 2-year period. And so like thinking about how things work and things fit in those types of periods of time, it doesn't have to be, this is what I want to do for the next 10 years, but it can be, what is it for the next 2 years? What is it for the next 4 years? What does that look like for this next season of my life? So that was a thought that kind of popped up as you were talking.
And Julie, what's so important, and team, as we listen to our coaches share their journey, is the tool of seasons, because seasons means it has a beginning date and it has an end date. And it really puts us in power. It empowers us to choose our beginning date and to choose our end date so that our brain can be somewhat safe and quiet. It can calm down a little bit and know that, okay, I can do this for 2 years. It doesn't define me. It doesn't mean my whole life. If we stick to our sports analogies, seasons are really within months, right? They're like a 6 month season or a year season. We certainly don't say a forever season. And so, why is it when we get into this adult life and this adult space that we define ourselves forever? If you're a sport coach, you have to be a sport coach forever. If you're a mom, you've got to be a mom forever. Yes, we'll be a mom forever. But we get lots of different seasons inside of that. We'll be a partner forever. We'll be true to ourselves forever. But inside those seasons, I really value anchoring into how do we want to get better and better every season and really give ourselves the space to evolve and not say, okay, just because we chose this in this particular season of our life, we got to stay here forever. Thinking about our college kids that we coach, certainly their freshman year, we're like, oh, freshman year, lots of grace, right? Lots happening. Sophomore year, a little bit more from a leadership perspective, beginning to understand who they are. Junior year, more about we, starting to really step into, okay, how can I contribute in a really powerful way because I'm understanding more about myself. And senior year, let's do this, right? Like they actually have 4 years to really evolve as a person and step into leadership and understanding themselves and playing a role on the team. So that's an example of how we can have a season that's a couple of months while you figure out transition and you heal and you grieve and you go through all that. And then you say, okay, my next season is going to be 2 or 3 months of exploration and figuring out what I want to do. And then you can start to really determine once you say, okay, I'm going for this. What exactly season do you want to put on that? So remember, season is beginning and an end date. So, Lynn, take us through where you are transitionally.
Sure. So I think my biggest kind of looking back at my film, the transition was having the courage to look in the mirror, which is so funny because we say that to our student athletes all the time. And then I really went back into, well, what is most important to me? And I started to discover that when you're looking at that 3D life professionally, I absolutely loved what I was doing. Yes, it was a grind. And kind of through this process, we talked about seasons, and I was almost in this marathon where, because our staff was constantly changing over and had kids in the last couple years, I never really took that time off, because you want the best for your own family, like your little munchkins, your little people, but then also the people that you're coaching. And when your staff is turning over and you don't have this consistency, and you were amazing because you stepped in as sport life coach for the team. However, that wasn't enough for me to step away to actually refuel. So then I was realizing that my personal stats were really affected by it. And those were, my professional might have been 9s and 10s or 8s or even 7s. Personal was probably like 6s or 5s, or you start to feel this sense of, and I'll use pressure, or almost like you're missing out on something because you're trying to do it all at once. And I remember doing that with the babies too in the beginning, where I was trying to hire a staff. So you're trying to answer these emails, but then they're screaming because they need food and they're so unpredictable. And when they take naps, you're supposed to take naps, but I didn't take a nap because I wanted to pump out some work. So then at the end, you realize, like, I'm not giving 10s to anybody at this point. So what am I doing? So my courage was almost, if I change directions and kind of figure out this, recalibrate, what can I do next? There's an unknown. So the courage for me was kind of that self-discovery, that transition is okay. And similar to what Julie mentioned with these seasons, now I'm in a season of refueling the personal stats, kind of finding professionally what I can do that still meets the 10s in a different, I'll say, competitive atmosphere, which takes some discovery, and I'm still working through that transition. Yeah, so while it's worth it, I constantly have to speak to you or friends or remind myself that, hey, wow, my personal stats have changed, even though professionally it's so different that sometimes I feel like, what am I doing? Why did I do that? So it's trusting the process. And again, we mention that language all the time, and there's a journey, and it's okay that these journeys can take you down a slightly different path, and you can end up right where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, that is a beautiful statement. And so let's just talk about the power of 3 dimensions, because that is really what is so honoring of our brand, and what's important to us is really introducing who we are as whole people rather than the identity of who we are professionally. And that's really just what we do. Instead, it can take over in terms of who we are versus what we do. And so our 3 dimensional model is personal, professional, and philanthropic. And personal is really for significance in terms of what matters to me in my personal life. And professional is all about success. And for us, that's competitive greatness, really honoring our competitive spirit. And philanthropic is about service, and it's about giving hope, just being a giver. Philanthropic means to give. And so our new thinking around it, rather than giving money, because we don't always have a season of giving money, we can always have a season of being a giver and to give hope to ourselves, to our family, to the person that we're at the restaurant with, a smile, a hello, something. It's just a nice way to really challenge ourselves to be 3D and to know that throughout the day, we're going to personally honor our well being. which is all about who we are. We're going to take care of ourselves, rest, recover. Team, you're getting to hear our team talk about that in terms of really that power of what are my stats from a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is low, 10 is fabulous. We want to live in that 8, 9, or 10 zone and be able to really honor, am I taking care of myself personally to really win my well-being so that I can show up professionally and be competitively great and then be able to give hope throughout that journey of the day. And so that's that test that we're doing for ourselves, and it really empowers us as we make decisions or we think about next. We're on the discovery of what's my stat on this? On a scale of 1 to 10, how does this feel at the moment? How does it align with my competitive spirit? And most importantly, does it fit into my 3D model of who I really want to be in the life that I want to live? So, a good question as we anchor into this is, what's going on in the world that I want to be a solution to? And Julie, as you think about that, I know you're in your rest and recovery and your grieving season. That's what happens in change. I know that your brain is constantly thinking about change and solutions. And so, what shows up for you?
Yeah, it was you as you were talking. Let me start over. As you were talking, I was thinking about the personal side, and I know Lynn is going to connect with me on this one, and Carlette, you've been all through it. But as a mom and a working mom, like the immediate is like, oh, well, personal is my family, right? And so I work, and then I work for my family, and then there's no actual like personal time or personal challenge, or that's where I think a lot of us will find our rest and recovery, is when we're doing something that's for us. And I know for myself, as having been, an athlete, I think, okay, well, if I can squeeze a workout in, then that's my personal, right? But that is just to keep me sane. And that's like 20 minutes of movement just to like make me a sane human being. And so I think about the things that like life is passing by, and when you're a working mother, it's like, that's it. You live in those two spaces. And then I'm like, oh, I will be the room parent, and I will go on all the field trips and do all the things. And then I'm like, and it's a wonderful thing, but it also kind of falls in that bucket of like family. And so there is some kind of gray space between that. But I turned 40 a little over a year ago, and I keep turning 40, which is awesome. I had a 40th surprise party this past fall. I was like, I'm just going to keep doing this. But one of the things I thought about was like, what do I want in my 40s? And from a personal perspective, like, what are those other pieces of my personality that I have not been able to really dive into and find time for? And I think that's the real challenge, because there are these things that like make my heart sing. But we don't have, you talk about golden nuggets. It's like, it's so hard to find that time. And when you do, you feel selfish. Like I feel selfish watching Netflix, it's like Emily in Paris came out yesterday, and I was like so excited for it. Season 3, which like, this is the teeny bopper side of me, but like, I couldn't wait for it. And it was midnight, and I was still cutting boxes and thinking about what the kids have for tomorrow. And it's like, that would have been my personal, right? But that's not really me diving into the things that make me tick. That's really more of I think that's a real challenge for us as working mothers, is there are these other pieces of what makes us, right? These are just elements of who we are. And then there's this whole other personal side of us that we explored when we were younger and teenagers and into our 20s and in college. And then those like formative years that we don't touch upon the moment that we have children, because it's not about life balance. It's literally just like, how do we manage work and our home life? And it doesn't leave a lot of space for us to thrive as individuals.
Well, Julie, what's so beautiful about your words and just the power of our heart is that we talk about how valuable our family is, and we talk about work, and we're the common denominator. Like we're the ones showing up inside our family to make it a 10 experience, to get all the projects and all the little ones all coached up on everything they need in life. And then we're coming to work and we're usually the head of organizations or the head coach, or, we're in charge of making sure that all of those people are set up for success. How interesting that we've left ourselves out of the equation and really compete at the highest level without any training or coaching. So, I mean, if you think about our athletes, all we do is surround them with coaches and training and set up their time. And so from an executive level or kind of going next level, how do you really give yourself that opportunity to just have space to think about who am I, what's important to me? And that really is the gift of the stats tool, because it's in moments that we're figuring out who we are. It isn't about necessarily, I mean, retreats are fabulous, love them. Inside managing our 24 golden nuggets, though, we want to be realistic about all of this. Sounds fabulous. This is a 10. I would love to be able to watch my Netflix, put my children down, have a beautiful meal, pour a little red liquid in my case, and, just enjoy all of those things. The truth is, life is happening very quickly. And let's enjoy that ride and find joy on it. And that's the stat tool. As things are happening very quickly, you having the ability to say, what's my stat on that? What's my stat on that? That's what we do with our athletes, is that they are in the game playing and the stats are happening. We don't pull them off and say, okay, we're going to slow everything down and you're going to figure this out. That's inside practice. And we watch the film on it. We're going to live like every day is game day. And the only time we get to watch our film and really have practice is at night when everybody's asleep and things have kind of calmed down. We have a moment of reflection. The new thinking is, let's embrace every day's game day. We can determine how we're going to win it. That's with our stats being in the 8, 9s, or 10s. Some cardio in the morning, some cardio in the afternoon. That's life cardio. And life cardio is all about something that is a very low stat, and yet it gets us to a high stat. So for instance, for me, cardio is cooking, totally a 0, eating, totally a 10, love, love, love eating, definitely don't like all the prep and all the work, got to do it 3 or 4 times a day. So I could either be miserable 3 or 4 times a day, or I could have new thinking and new skills and new hope and really change. Okay, when I'm cooking, I'm thinking about the desired outcome of nurturing my body, being for me, all of that good mind stuff. So that's how we're going to focus on coaching and training ourselves inside this season of transition. Is every day's game day. And what are your stats from the minute you wake up till the minute you go to bed? A bit of reflection and taking control to say, if my stats are a 7 or below, how do I want to raise them tomorrow? The great thing about every day being game day is new game tomorrow, right? If we lose today and the stats are low and it's a struggling day, welcome to being human. We're going to have those. Just like you want to train your littles or you want to train your athletes to move into next play or what did I learn, always that forward focus. We want to do the same thing as we think about life. So Lynn, as you think about being the solution, what shows up for you?
Well, first of all, and Julie, you're speaking, I just want to say amen, sister. I completely resonate with everything you're saying. And it's just so fascinating. So part of this being the solution, that again, I feel like I'm in the journey, so trying to figure out, but there's these things that just pull at your heartstrings. And one is this idea of, well, how do you empower especially young women? If we are the common denominator, so often it feels like we're on this little island. And I don't know if it's just practicing, or is it, there's so many unknowns of what it could be. Just working with this younger generation and now being a little bit younger than I was, you can see how important it is to just switch that mindset. And what do resources actually look like? And how do we create a support team that we actually rely on? Because we have it in our team setting, and then as we go and have our families, it just, like I said, it feels a little bit isolated. And I also think part of that is us being able to reach out to others to kind of pick them up. And I just feel like there's, even looking back, some of my most powerful, I'll say, mentors or support people when I went after my first head coaching job was a male former football coach called and said, you need to go apply and I'll practice with you. So we'll meet and we're going to do interview reps. And then our largest supporter at at St. Joe's, the program I was at, was a male alum who had daughters. So it's just fascinating to see who are those people. And even at Syracuse, really similar story. They love sport and they see what it does for young women, and how can we get more women doing that for women. So part of this kind of pay it forward, and especially in my sport of field hockey, what do true resources look like? And not just for when I'm here, right? Or when this year, but how do we continue that almost sustainability and have it this grow model? So like all these little things spark at me now for how do you actually make a difference, not just for you and the one person you're working with, but that kind of trickle down effect, which it's so exciting just figuring out where to start. And this is why things like this are so refreshing, because you can just feel what you're passionate about, and you can see how there's so many amazing people out there, and especially women in leadership positions, and what they're doing and what they're juggling. And if we can put that at the forefront, it would just help so many people.
So as we talk about being the solution as women, that's why we're doing this conversation, is that we want to be part of the solution. We want to really get real with our conversations about what's happening, what we're wrestling with, and we want to be different. We want to be the women that are different and show how to be different, live different, and also just really honor who we are as women, and that we are relational. We are thinking about our families all the time. We are showing up to work as well. We do want it all. And you know what? We're going to get it all. We're going to get it all in our own way. And that's really the gift of having a support team, is you've got people supporting you and being for you and cheering you on, rather than you being isolated. So it takes us back to that courage component. And Julie, how do you stay courageous in your leadership ability to really lead yourself and all the people that you are committed to leading?
Yeah, I think back to the season that you and I just completed this fall, and right before I moved into a transitional space. But I remember telling you, I'm like, I need you to help me master this 5-hour workday. Like, I just know, like, women have superpowers, moms have superpowers. I'm like, I can work extremely hard and concentrated and focused for certain periods of time. And I want to make space for my family, for the personal, for like really evaluating what those golden nuggets look like. And I think that's a courageous moment for me, is saying, like, I know that I'm capable of doing the work that needs to be done in a more concentrated time frame, so that I can open space up for the other things. Yeah. And I'm also, at least in this previous role, was in a position where it's like no one's watching me clock in, clock out. So if I work really hard and get my job done, like, no one's saying, oh, she left at 2:00 today. Like, I know that I can do the work and do what's necessary of me and make the phone calls and do those things in that time frame. So I think about courage being like the ability to look outside the mold. And the mold is that you work from 9 to 5 and you have an hour lunch break or whatever that is. Now the mold has completely changed since COVID, because now it's like, well, you can work anytime. You can work at home, you can work in the office, you can work from your phone, you can work while you're watching your kid in a play. Like, it's just this, there's no boundaries, there's no barriers. And so it's a challenge for us to create those barriers. But I also feel like it's a time period for us as strong, courageous, powerful women to look at it a little differently and say, why does it have to be dictated to me? Why can't I take a little bit more control of what that looks like? And that's hard, because you've got to have good leadership above you who's going to support you. You have to have people around you who are going to support that. But there are things that I want for this time period of my life, for my family, and then for myself personally, that I can't accomplish if I'm sitting at a desk for 9 hours a day. I just can't. And I know that I don't need to in order to be great at my job. I know that I can work in concentrated periods of time. You were teaching me about, 30 minutes and then, a joy break, and then 30 minutes and a joy break, and how that looks. And I think courage for me moving forward is just like, how do I design that? What do I want it to look like? And then really try to set myself up for success. Because I do want it all. I do. And I don't want to settle for my family being pushed aside because I want a career, or my career being pushed aside because I want to care for my family.
And that's our competitive spirit. I mean, that's the gift of us owning our power and really being for us. Competitive greatness is competing for what matters to us, never against anyone. And that's the gift of having the courage for ourselves to really figure out what is it that I want. And most importantly, be as disciplined and train as intentionally for what we want as we ask others to do in all the things that we're coaching and training them in. So, Julie, it's really beautiful in terms of thinking about that intentional training and you owning that you want a 5-hour day. If we think about our athletes, we bring them in for 90 minutes to 2 hours of a training workout. Then they go to weights and they go to academics, or they go to all these different things. And it's inside a very concentrated amount of time. When they're in sport training, they're not trying to do academics, or they're not trying to do weightlifting. They're not kind of thinking about other things. We constantly train in sports for full engagement. We know that that is where greatness happens, being competitively great for ourselves and being intentional about that focus, being completely fully engaged. So what a gift as women for us to give ourselves permission and to design our day for full engagement, so that when we're at work, we can be at work and we can be competitively great. And when we're at home, we can be at home and we can be competitively great, because that's our spirit that we're bringing with us wherever we are. Now, tons of performance barriers show up. All this sounds great. Again, we've got to own it. And Julie, you speak into the courage being you taking responsibility for it and you asking for it from the people above you or the people around you or whoever's on your support team. And so, Lynn, as you explore thinking about owning your power and your day and fitting in, wanting it all and being competitively great, what are you finding?
Oh, great question. Intentional showed up for me, because even with the move, so moved houses, we're now on campus, the boys moved school is just far enough away where everything has to change, like appearances, everything. In this fall season, I almost retrained, and that's when I added on the sport life coaching. So through the change, being intentional of, this is the time I can manage it because this is the most important. And then I think the other thing that starts to show up for me is I almost feel similar to Julie when she was talking about the number of hours in the day. So often I feel like I need to be everywhere, but then what I'm doing in those moments, or in that hour block that I'm in the athletic building, because I'm overseeing, so I can actually do a lot in that amount of time if I started to kind of think through that 3D model and prioritize even the amount of time that we spent with the sport like coaching and a book a week. I was like, what? I don't know how I'm going to do all this, but then it just becomes your routine, and almost drove me that season. And because I was doing that kind of work, I enjoyed it. So the other things, it gave me time to almost figure out myself through that process of what does courage look like in a new position.
So, team, as we think about really going for the life that you want, every day is game day. You got 24 golden nuggets. That's that clock, that shot clock that never runs out. It runs out at the end of every day and resets. And so we're going to own every day's game day. We're going to stat up throughout the day. What are our stats? How do I really improve? If you've got a stat that's a 6, how do you make it a 7 and 8 so that you have control over how you want to intentionally design your life, live your life, give hope to others. So, Julie, words of wisdom.
The one thing I wanted to add to this conversation is that there's a level of discipline here too. And
Yes.
it's not like we can step into this new space and be like, I'm going to be great at it. You know, even the tools that you were handing to me this fall about 30-minute a block of work and a 5-minute joy break, like that takes time, practice, and discipline. It's just like sport. There's no way that we would just enter into a brand new sport or a brand new strategy or way that we're going to approach the season and be good at it right away. Like we've got to practice it every day. And I think that's the thing that like can be a drawback to us being competitively great, because we're like, no, I got this. Like I can nail that, you know, but it could take an entire season of discipline and practice of one skill to make a small difference in the way that we're approaching the day. So I think that's a good reminder of not just like, it's easy to come off some of these conversations and being like, oh, I totally got this. And then, you know, walk into your job, or, you know, for me upstairs in my house, and then it's like chaos, and you know, all that is kind of tossed to the side, or I'll work on that later. So I think it's just a really good reminder that when we are trying to make change in our life, like we need to work on one skill and kind of nail that one skill before we start trying to do all the other things.
Julie, I love the grace component of being for us in a way that we choose. What's one thing that I think is going to be somewhat a game changer here based on my desired outcome? Your desired outcome was a 5-hour workday. So being specific about figuring out what it is that you want, and then picking one thing you're going to do to really train and be intentional about honoring that desire and that commitment that you're making. So notice that everything we coach and train and give other people and love on them and support them and cheer them on, we get to do it ourselves, and we get to give ourselves that opportunity to really be it before we give it. So that live it to give it model. And Lynn, as you think about words of wisdom.
I think mine would be really going back to that why, that self compass. And I've had to break it up with personal, professional, philanthropic, even in my own head. And then I'm finding with that, through change, it is uncomfortable, and we know this, and we're so used to pushing through. However, it is also easy to have, whether it's self-doubt or just asking yourself, what am I doing? And it's so powerful to connect with that support team to almost recalibrate your own thinking, because I'm doing my desired outcome right now, but because it's different, it doesn't feel like that all the time. So I almost feel like I'm lost. However, it's because I'm just in a new space. But then if I go back, and we had this discussion the other day, and you reminded me, well, I've done what I've set out to do. I'm in the process. And I was like, oh, wow. And you feel so different. And that is so empowering. I think that's what gives me so much hope. And I want to give others that hope. So the compass, you're on the way, but checking in with others, because it doesn't always feel like that.
Team, we need each other. That is such a winning strategy, is to just own our huge hearts, our brilliant brains, and our great desire to make a huge difference in the world and to really win our lives and the way we want it, personally, professionally, philanthropically. We got this, we can do it. The winning strategy is to be for ourselves and for each other in ways that we could have never imagined. And so thank you both for giving hope to our world, for just sharing this journey of transition. And team, we are here for you. So we want you to be able to be the solution to whatever it is that's showing up in your life. Know that you and your life are so worth it, and make sure that you own what's important to you and be disciplined and challenge yourself to be competitively great for what matters to you. Thank you, Julie and Lynn. Greatly value and appreciate you.